I think we have a demon in Cedar Brook. Before I elaborate on the title of this, I'd like to give you all some background. I've worked at Cedar Brook, not the place's real name, for the last few years, as I'm finishing up nursing school. The place is built as an assisted living facility, but I've been put that in quotes because quite honestly, the people who live there require much more than just basic assistance. The place is pretty much a nursing home for rich people. I love the residents there, but there are a few that require a lot more care that we can give them. But, because we're all a dedicated bunch, we give it the best we've got. I'm going to refer to the subject of the story as Mrs. Sally Jones. Mrs. Jones was admitted here last December with a not super unusual of Alzheimer's disease with behavioral disturbances. We learned not soon after arrival that her case was anything but usual. The woman, who otherwise looked like your typical 80-something-year-old, was unable to communicate except for screams, agonizing, blood-curdling screams that could make even the most seasoned healthcare professional's hair stand on end. Her face would contort into a horrible grimace as she screamed, and then it would just go blank for a few seconds before the screams picked up again. I work with dementia patients for several years now, but I thought that nothing would surprise me. But this was the first case I'd experienced that honestly had me disturbed. We tried everything to get her screaming to stop. We'd sit with her for one-on-one time, try and distract her with food, with music, with a baby doll. But nothing we did seemed to calm her down. The doctors had her on every medication under the sun, and her prescription list contained enough to knock out an elephant, but nothing was able to combat the horrible screams. I've always believed and been interested in the paranormal, and working here has certainly cemented my belief even more. But I have always been skeptical about demons. I am an atheist, and to me, demons seem too churchy for me to believe that they're true. But in all honesty, demonic was the perfect adjective to describe this woman's affliction. Her constant screaming agitated the other residents and could even be heard by visitors from outside the building. It made the otherwise serene and charming unit almost unbearable at times, but soon we all became immune to it. It was the only coping mechanism we had. Luckily for us, the woman who shared the room with her was easygoing, spent most of her time outside in the common area. Recently, her health had taken a sharp decline, and hospice was called in. While we all were saddened by this, we also felt relief that maybe her suffering was almost over. We were instructed to give her liberal doses of morphine every hour, but her screams persisted, even though this barrage of powerful drugs, even when she could no longer open her eyes, and we thought that she had slipped into forever unconsciousness. She continued with her screaming. Her family wound up leaving the bedside because they could no longer stand to hear her. Whatever was inside her that was making her act like this did not want to give her up. It was a horrible feeling not being able to give her a peaceful ending. Even the most seasoned nurses were breaking down in tears by the ends of the shifts. She was near death when I left work last night. Death rattled and everything, and I fell asleep silently, hoping that she would slip away before sunrise. As I tried to drift off into sleep, I could still hear her wails reverberating in my head. When I arrived to work the next morning, the night shift CNAs were all standing on the nurse's station, looking visibly shaken and white as sheets. When I asked them what was wrong, they told me that Miss Jones had passed away last night. I could not help but sigh with audible relief. Her suffering was finally over, and our unit could hopefully go back to normal. Suddenly, a blood-curdling scream echoed through the unit. Wide-eyed, I ran towards the source of the noise, thinking that maybe one of the residents fell. When I realized that the noise was coming from Miss Jones' former room, my heart sank to my stomach. When I peeked through the door, I noticed that their bed had already been stripped and the most of her belongings had already been removed. For a minute, I thought that no one was in there. I wondered to myself if one of the CNAs had forgotten to open a window when she passed. I looked on the other side of the wall to see her roommate sitting up in bed, staring blankly ahead of her. This was unusual, as her roommate was almost always out in the common area by the time. She turned to look at me, and her face twisted into what only could be described as an inhuman expression. She then let out an all too familiar scream. I about to shit my pants as I ran out of there. I know that I should have gone over and comforted her, but in all honesty, I was terrified. I am actually writing this from my car in my lunch break, because I don't know what else to do. I'd get charged with patient abandonment if I left the job right now, and possibly lose my nursing license, but I am not sure if I can will myself to go back in there. Not even the charge nurse knows what to do, and she has been in this field for over 30 years. She's waiting to hear back from the doctor. This resident has never had any history of behaviors like this and had been totally baseline last night when I left. I'm starting to think that whatever tormented Miss Jones was not just a misfiring of her brain. We truly have no explanation for her roommate adopting the same behaviors. Up until now, I was pretty much convinced that demons were the work of religious zealots with overactive imaginations, but now I am not sure. I am hoping someone has answers to this. I love the residents here and I want to protect them from whatever this is, but I also want to protect myself. I've heard different versions of this story from folks from all over, and they all insist it is true. Some girl goes missing, her boyfriend killed her, and a few weeks later, he disappears too. Mine is a little different, sure in the details, but also because I can verify the authenticity, because I lived it. Wendy Jameson was your typical New England teen. She attended a small high school, earned a C+ average, had a job at the convenience store across the street, lived in a quite dead and cul-de-sac, real typical Americana. If asked to complete the cliché, Wendy also had a wild boyfriend, Aaron Goodking, who her father would threaten with a shotgun from the porch. All in all, Wendy didn't have much to complain about. She was entering her senior year, Aaron had found steady work, and they were already making plans to move in together as soon as Wendy graduated. Aaron's first job was working in the new high school where Wendy would graduate from, like any newcomer. Aaron was tasked with the most mindless of jobs, hauling tools and equipment on and off the site, running errands for the foreman, paying his dues. The school was ready to be completed and opened by November of that school year, but a major hiccup in the existing school's ventilation system forced the district to open the doors of the unfinished school early. Everything major was in place. Classrooms were finished. Bathrooms were in working order. Even the heating system was in place. The only things left to finish were the football field and the behemoth concession stand that would accompany it. The school year started in the same unremarkable fashion it did every year. Sure, the building was shiny and new, but there were still the same people doing the same stupid things. Wendy was among the horde, mindlessly lazing about her day. Wake up to go to school, sneak out for a smoke break with Aaron, who was still busy working on the concession stand. He had even been promoted and was now in charge of monitoring concrete pours. Wendy wasn't the all-American girl next door. She kept to herself and was content with where life was headed. But as senior year really got rolling, Wendy seemed to lose a little steam she had to begin with. Her C+ average quickly descended to a deep minor. She was fired from her job for taking too many cigarette breaks with her boyfriend, and she had been caught at an underage drinking party. Reacting the way most parents would, Wendy's folks decided to tighten their grip on their daughter, thinking she needed more direction or structure or whatever bullshit hot word was being promoted by Dr. Phil at the time. They grounded her, took her car keys, cancelled her cell phone, and for a time, it seemed like this was paying off. Her grades were slowly crawling back towards a passing average. She had found another job, and to her parents' knowledge, stopped seeing Aaron. So, when the high school announced a dance and lock-in to celebrate the new building, her parents thought it would be a fitting reward for the new Wendy. Wendy feigned her interest to her parents, anything to get them off her back and her out of the house. When the Jamesons arrived at the school to drop Wendy off, they noticed a slew of police cars and ambulances over near the football field. Wendy's parents assumed someone had gotten hurt at football practice, as the field had not been completed. Not paying this much mind, Wendy opened her door and quickly joined her friends. As the night pressed on, Wendy revealed to her friends her new reason for attending the event. She had still been dating Aaron, and he was going to pick her up for a romantic evening alone. Wendy was flying high. She had tricked her parents, and she was going to get a night of freedom with the man of her dreams. Her friends urged against her plans, citing the numerous factory that would surely notice she was missing, or the fact that Aaron, being 22 years old, was not allowed on campus. Try as they might, Wendy would not be dissuaded. Wendy and her friends carefully chose their spots for their sleeping bags nearest the gym emergency exit. The door had been propped open during the dance to allow the room to cool down. Wendy waited nervously for Aaron to arrive. His lime-green gremlin pulled into the parking lot, finding a particularly unlit space so as not to be seen. Wendy gave one more devious glance to her friends and bolted out the open door. Wendy quickly got into the car, and it was gone almost immediately. Wendy's friends went about their night and returned home the following morning. It was around 11:30 a.m. when Mr. and Miss Jameson started calling Wendy's friends. She was supposed to get a ride home from a friend's mother, and they had yet to see her. Thinking she may have just gone home with a different friend, they dialed number after number, while their assurance of Wendy's safety slowly fizzled away. The Jamesons called the police and were asked to come to the police station to file a formal report. As they left their cul-de-sac, they noticed something off about the dead-end sign at the top of their street. As they got closer, Miss Jameson clasped her hands over her mouth. Scrawled in some red substance around the word end were a chilling W and Y, completing the evil tableau, Dead Wendy. The police quickly questioned Wendy's friends, who immediately revealed Wendy's romantic plans with Aaron, which was particularly confusing to Officer Bandy. The reason being, Officer Bandy had been at the football field the previous evening when the Jamesons had arrived. He wasn't there for an injury though, rather for a crime scene. Aaron Godkin's body had been discovered under a few feet of wet cement with the blade of a shovel lodged in his head. The police toiled away trying to identify even one suspect, but never did. The reason why? After I finished Wendy, I went on to the next new high school to find another sweetheart eager to escape her parents. Maybe there's a reason every town tells the same story. It was a Sunday night, and I was heading to a friend's place to help him with a broken water pipe at his house. Now, there is two routes that I can use to get to his place by car. One is the shortest and has me to drive by an old cemetery and an old church, which is also a poorly lit road, while the other takes me through a part of town that is well known for car break-ins at night. So as I figured that I would rather drive near the creepy cemetery rather than risk being robbed on the other road. After a short inspection of my car and checking if I took everything I needed for the job, as I was not going to be going back home to grab a forgotten tool, since it was already about 1:40 a.m. Once I was sure that I had everything, I got in the car and started driving to my friend's place, putting the radio on while smoking a cigarette. Most of the drive was uneventful, as it was most of the time, and I was the only one driving on the road at this time. I had some cars driving on the opposite side of the lane once in a while, but nothing out of ordinary. The radio was playing fine, and at the time had some oldie song playing. It had a calming effect on me. But then, as I took the turn to get on the road to the cemetery, I started feeling like something was wrong. But I continued, when suddenly the radio started being distorted. At this point, I was about 30 to 40 meters from the cemetery entrance, so I stopped and started checking the radio to what was causing it, as I never had any issues with it. I started changing channels to see if it was a problem with the one I was turned in, but it seemed like every channel was just distortion and statics, when out of nowhere a male voice comes in through static saying, "Turn around and go away." I was shocked and frozen in disbelief for a second, and when I looked up, I kid you not, there is a man standing about 20 meters from my car on the side of the road. He had a black suit with a white shirt with a black tie. Confused and a bit scared, I turned my lights on, and to my horror and shock, I can still see him. This time though, I'm completely and utterly scared, as I can't make out any facial details, as well as his legs. I realize that even with my full lights on, I cannot see its legs, and there is no bush or anything that could be blocking my view. I could hear my own heartbeat accelerating, and then my lights start to flicker, and then it's just gone, like nothing happened, and suddenly my radio is back to normal, playing country music, breaking the silence, and almost giving me a heart attack. I glance at the clock and it's 3:01 a.m. Not thinking twice, I put my engine back on drive and speed my way out of there as fast as I can and get to my friend's house in no time. I ended up going through the same road on my way back in the morning, and as I drove by the spot where I saw the thing was a memorial. Through the years, I ended up going through the same road quite a lot at night, but I never seen the thing again.